Mike here from Terrible Infant, and I'm back once again for more Phantasm fun. If you've been watching the series, I've watched all 5 Phantasm films, and I've been reviewing them and I've been rating them, all 5 of them. And now I'm back to rank them. Okay, so how I'm ranking them, basically, I am ranking them by how much I enjoyed the film and how much I like the film. B, how well was it made, how much effort it took into how's the script and so forth, and just see what I think of, what I think is the best film in the series. So it's real subjective. These are my rankings of the Phantasm films, my favorites of the Phantasm films. Doesn't mean they're the best, doesn't mean this is the right ranking, doesn't mean this is a better ranking than what you think. And maybe you love the film that I have last, or maybe you hate the film that I have first. That's all good. This is just my ranking, all right? So don't get too mad. Before I go on, I just want to let you know that if you do enjoy this content, if you enjoyed this series and this ranking, please think about subscribing to us on YouTube. Follow us. Click the subscribe button. Click the bell to follow us. Check us out on Instagram. Check us out on Facebook. If you're feeling generous and want to donate to us directly, you can check us out on Patreon as well. Any support you're willing to give us, we greatly appreciate. But even if you don't have no money and don't want to support us that way, just by watching this and sharing this, you're already helping us out so much. So thank you for watching, and I really appreciate it. So I've rambled long enough. Let's get into the ranking. So I'm going to be going from 5 to 1. 1 being my favorite, 5 being my worst, okay? So number 5, no surprise, it's up behind me, Phantasm 5 Ravager. In my review, I said this was one of the worst films I've ever seen in my life. That still stands. I've seen a lot of garbage in my life. I've seen a lot of crap B movies. This isn't even a B movie. This is not nearly as good as most B movies, okay? This was one of the, like I said, one of the worst films in my life. It was horrible technically. The script didn't make sense. The acting was lame. The visuals were lame. The sound was bad. The special effects were atrocious. It was just a complete dud. Complete misfire. Do not watch this film unless you need to complete the series, and even then, have something else handy to do while you're half paying attention to the nonsense that's going on. All right? Ouch, sorry. Next. Dun, dun, dun. Drum beat. Phantasm 4. So Phantasm 4 reused a lot of old footage from the first film and some from the second film, I believe. And it has the same kind of feeling of 5, where they're shooting in the desert, these cheap locations, and there's a lot of wandering around and a lot of nothing happening. I would still gladly watch this over Phantasm 5. But again, in terms of the Phantasm series, this is my second least favorite one. If I was going back to watch Phantasm films, I obviously would avoid 5. And honestly, I would not watch this one either. Again, it just didn't move the series forward. It was more of the same but worse. Everything was worse about this. It looked cheaper. It sounded cheaper. It made less sense. It was less fun. It was less action-packed. It was less spooky. Just not the way you want to keep a franchise going. And maybe the fact that this was so bad is why it took 20 years to make the 5th one. But we all know how that turned out, okay? So, number 3 is, bam, number 3, surprise. So number 3 was the last good Phantasm film that was made, that I believe. This came out in '94, so they were still only 15 years removed from the first one, so that's like an average of 5 years every film. That's not too bad. The third one kind of ramped up the goofiness and the silliness, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? I never found the Phantasm films all that scary. The second one had more action. The first one was creepy and weird and new. And then this one was a little more comedic and a little more action-packed, a little more silly. There's a whole subplot with the kid and with Rocky. But it had some fun stuff with the gangsters, with those 3 criminals going after the kid and Reggie. And some of the gore scenes were pretty cool. So it still had some cool stuff going for it. And if I was going back, I would watch this once more. I would actually end the series basically. I mean, they couldn't end the series with this one because of the way the ending is set up. It's clearly begging for a sequel because nothing's resolved and it just opens all these storylines up. So I get that. But honestly, this was the last good Phantasm film. And if it actually ended there with a proper ending, I would have been satisfied. So, number 2. So I will say, obviously, 1 and 2 are the only 2 films left, so they have to be in there somewhere. And those 2 films I actually think are pretty good films overall, not just for Phantasm films, but overall are good films. And it just depends, I went back and forth about which one to put second, which one to put first. And it just came down to it that number 2 I have number 2. The reason I have number 2 here instead of the first one is the first one was a little more creepier than this one, and this was a little more action-packed. But because of the budget limitations they're working with, some of the action isn't that good, right? You can't have these huge explosions and huge car chases and all this other crazy gory stuff because you just don't have the money for it. But the second one was interesting. They tried to do this thing where Mike and this girl had the mind connection thing. They try to set up Reggie as this avenging dude whose family's wiped out and he's got to get the tall man. And he's more of a main character in the second film. He's more of an action guy, more of a badass. And they're actively going out and trying to get the tall man instead of reacting to what he's doing. So in that regard, number 2 is actually a good, fun film to watch. I definitely recommend it. Even though they replaced the main Michael Baldwin from the first one, in this one, which I don't know if it was an age thing, a schedule thing, or what. It didn't bother me that much, honestly, because a time jump has happened and you can, it just didn't matter. This isn't one of those films where something like that would matter. The only person, honestly, that they couldn't replace in this film was Angus Scrimm, the tall man, because he's so iconic as the tall man and with the franchise that, even if like Reggie, Mike, and Jody were wiped off and you introduced new characters to go up against the tall man, it would still work because it's all about him. It's all about what he's doing to these towns, making these dwarves, and all the creepiness that goes into that. So, yeah. And obviously, Phantasm, the original, is my favorite of the series. The reason why is it had this sort of creepy vibe. It took itself a little more seriously than the rest of the series. It was a little eerie. The music was a little spooky and strange. The world felt a little bigger. Like there was other characters besides Reggie, Mike, Jody, and the tall man. There's like people doing stuff. There's like a town. It felt like a town. It wasn't abandoned just yet. Even though the budget was small and it's not like a huge town or anything like that, there is some of that aspect, and that helped a lot. The technical aspects of it were pretty good. The camera work was good. It looked pretty good. I mean, I would have assumed the most recent film would look the best with, the best technical capabilities, but it's not even close. The gore in this one with the sphere looked really good. When he gets his fingers cut off, that looked good. It all looked good. It looked good. It was fun. It was creepy. It was gory. It was weird and silly. Yeah, it was a good time. I really enjoyed it. This was my favorite Phantasm film. I would recommend it for anyone who hasn't seen this film to go check it out. This one and the second one are my 2 favorites, but this one gets a slight edge just because of it came first and it was more original, but also it was a little more spooky, a little more creepy, a bigger world, a little more lived-in world, which I actually do appreciate. So that's why this one is number 1. Overall, though, I watch a lot of horror films. I've seen Friday the 13th. I've seen all of them. I've seen most of the Texas Chainsaw Massacres. I've seen most of the Halloweens. I've seen most of the Nightmare on Elm Street films. And I say most because I'm sure I missed some. I just can't remember off the top of my head. I can't even remember what I had for breakfast. But anyway, I've seen a lot of horror films and a lot of franchise horror films. And I got to say, Phantasm doesn't really hold up to a lot of them. Only the first 2 are actually really good films. I threw in the third one as a decent film in the franchise, but as a whole, it's not a great film compared to other films. The first 2 are pretty good, but 2 out of 5 for a franchise, especially the way the 4th and the 5th one ended and brought the series down. Overall, the Phantasm series is just so-so. You might love it, you might enjoy it, you might hate it. It just depends. The Tall Man, it's just a shame because the Tall Man is such an interesting, creepy, weird-looking villain, and they just couldn't stretch it into 5 good films. They got 2 out of them, but not 5. So there you have it. Those are my rankings of the Phantasm films. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think I completely messed these up? Do you love 5 and you want to send me some hate mail because you think that's the best film ever made? If so, you might want to check into a psychiatric hospital just like Mike did in the second one. But anyway, if you enjoy this content, once again, let me know. You can leave a comment. You can follow us here on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel. Make sure you click that bell so you're notified when we have new content. If you're feeling generous and want to support us on Patreon, there's always that as well. And all that information will be available on the screen or below the video on our YouTube channel. So I hope you've enjoyed this dive into Phantasm, a strange, uneven series, but worthwhile for a single watch through. I'll be doing more of this kind of stuff where I watch more movies and review them. I'm also going to be doing a lot of TV content because I love TV and I think our channel needs more of them. So if you enjoy that kind of stuff, please come back. If you want to see specific content, let me know. Leave a comment, send us an email, whatever. Just get in contact with us and we'll see what we can do. So until next time, this has been Mike for Terrible Infant, and I will see you later.